Well, welcome back everyone to Aligning with Success. We seem to have been following a flow of information that I want to sort of reflect on. Let me just see where that extra sound is coming from. Carol Hackbart, you're coming in a bit loud. If you can mute, there we go. Okay. Sorry again. So we've been following a thread of information, which is sort of an encapsulation of our business and how we do business if we're doing it with the sake of expanding our organization. So the focus is, how do I grow a downline? How do I grow a business with the concept of duplication being so critical to the process? It comes down to understanding a formula and then utilizing that formula repeatedly. And to the degree that we get better at it, obviously it runs more smoothly. So I just want to recap for us here. I'm going to share my screen. And then if you've got some questions with what we've actually covered, that would be quite useful to maybe get into. So we started the idea that there needs to be a why to engage a contact. In other words, a why is something about what motivates you to contact them, what could be potentially something that motivates them to investigate an opportunity. And I say that because we don't specify the Nikken opportunity as of yet until we've established a fix on their why. And this also, context is so important. So the context from where you're coming from, meaning the vision that you have for what you're doing, why you've engaged this person, the bigger the vision, obviously, the more relevant, because the bigger your vision for what you're going to create in the world, that's your business vision. And the bigger vision you have for yourself, which is what you're going to allow to become your personal experience in Nikken and in life, the bigger it is, the more it enables others to be involved in it. It's really simple. It's simple math. If you have a very small vision and a small expectation, you're not going to need much help to accomplish anything. And therefore, you're not going to attract people, because the words, the way you immerse yourself in this, the way you express yourself about this is just not going to come across as something worthy of anybody else's time or attention. But if you've got a big idea, the bigger that idea is, then the more likely they're going to be interested in what that idea is and how maybe they can partner with you to make that idea a reality. That idea being something of a business vision that could impact the world. And then within the context of that, you have your own reason for doing it. They will have their own reason for doing it. That's the personal reason. The how conversation is the conversation that shares with them the Nikken vehicle. This is the products of the opportunity, the business of the opportunity, and the system. Now, I typically go in the business products system order. But what's really, really important is the one word there that I'm sure most people omit when they're presenting Nikken, and that is that we actually have a system. And that's what makes it duplicatable. That's what makes it easy to follow. And that's what makes it doable for somebody on a part-time basis. The what is the conversation that leads them to understand what it takes to succeed. What's the strategy? And it's sort of a reflective thing, because if we did use one of the tools at the very beginning, which is the, I'll come to it in a slide in a second, which is the card that has the why 5 pillars on one side, and on the reverse side, it shows the partnering process. So we're coming back to that. We're saying, this is what we said we were going to do. Here we are doing it. We're almost at the conclusion of this, where this is now the what it takes conversation, the strategy that we use to grow our business, to grow our organization, to attract essentially customers and consultants. That's the strategy that we use. The process is the process that they themselves have almost completed, which is the 3 conversations, and the tools. Hopefully, as you're sharing this information with people, you are using tools to do the point. You're pointing to those tools, you're leveraging those tools, because then they can see that it is something that's duplicatable. You don't have to be an expert. You just have to follow the proven system. So let me just accelerate here for a second. and reflect on some of these tools that we've been talking about. So this is the tool I was saying. Your first tool is the why conversation. Basically, I put that on the table and I ask people to tell me a little bit about their 5 pillars of health and where they might fall short. They invariably look at the back side, so I have to tell them, just stick to the first side for now, we'll get to that. And then I get to the partnering process when we've completed the first, established the grounds for why they might be interested in looking at something. And then what I'm offering them is an opportunity to become informed. That's it. So that's why the reverse side, the partnering process. Through this process, you're going to become informed about what it is that this entails. And you're also being educated on what it takes to succeed. So now we come back at the third conversation, the what, and it's almost a reflective conversation. We've been through this dialogue already. Now let me just detail it out for you. So the why conversation, personal and business vision is really established in that. The how conversation, one of the tools that you have been familiarized with is the trifold. There's a few versions of it out, but essentially it's a way to do a quick one-on-one. That's one of the tools because it gets into the products, the business, and essentially the system in one trifold. There's a new presentation that we've been using as well, a better way. This presentation is something you can use as well to deliver a full-on NICAN presentation. It gets into the business of NICAN. It gets into the products of NICAN. There's a recording of it. There's several recordings now. There's a PowerPoint or a PDF of it. So you can use this tool. I actually have this loaded up on my, what do you call those things? I have not an iPad, but the other version of it. You know what I'm talking about. Essentially, it's like an iPad. So I can swing through
tablet.
Yeah, tablet. And I like mine because I can actually project it onto my large screen TV. I can mirror the TV, and then so I can do a presentation in home if I have that means. Otherwise, I use my laptop. But essentially, that's another presentation that delivers the how. This is new. It's more informative. The products, of course, are the products. And if you're doing a one-on-one in a coffee shop, you're probably not going to carry your sleep system with you. But you should carry your sample. I have it downstairs. Your sample of the sleep system. I have a bag, and in my bag I carry a lot of the different products so that I can do, number one, a demonstration, and number two, show them, feel. They can touch, feel. Remember, the tactical side of the business, the experiential side of the business is key to the product experience. And of course, because I don't carry all the products, I also bring the catalog with me, which I give them every time. Every prospect gets a catalog. Why? Because remember, there's going to be one of 3 outcomes here. So I'm investing in the future of those outcomes. Number 1 is they join me as a partner, which they're going to need a catalog anyway. Number 2, they join me as a customer. Again, they're going to need a catalog. And number 3 is they refer me to somebody. So either way, this is somebody I see as a potential customer for life, and therefore I want them to have a product catalog so that they can review what we have, and I review that with them. So that's part of the full-on meal of what is NICAN all about, how does this opportunity come into reality, come into fruition. And then the system is really the references to what it is that we do to become successful in NICAN. We share the business through a simple system, and we become a core consultant. These are components of that earlier presentation. Again, these are things that I leave behind, by the way, in an info pack that I leave them with. I want them going home with the information that we reviewed so they can review it together. Sometimes, and I have my copies of, let's just see over here. I don't have the book in front of me. Oh, here it is. Yeah, here. Sometimes I leave them with a copy of 4-Year Career, either one for women, if it's a woman I'm meeting with, or the 4-Year Career for a man, if it's a man. And I ask them. I don't just give it to them. I ask them, if I give you this, are you a reader? Yeah. I said, this will take you about 30 minutes to read. And I ask them for permission to share that with them, and if they'll read it. So that's the what situation. Now, or excuse me, the how situation. The what situation is what it takes to succeed. The tools that we reference here is the incentive program. The new incentive program for 2018 is available. So I show them Here's the program. This is what it's going to take. We're going to start off small and we're going to accelerate. And then I show them the tools that basically are our business in a nutshell. There's our strategy chart, which is our business in a nutshell. And the other tools that we have, of course, is our ability to connect with people, our support system. So I work with that. I show people that we have an online support system, which is also recorded and available 24/7. Why would I even show that? Yes, it's good for them to know that they have support and that they have a library that they can resource. But remember, the fear that anybody has is they don't have the time to do this. And if I can show them how their potential organization is going to also be trained and supported, then with no extra time on their part, then this is also a very important question factor in the time, money, contacts investment. Do I have the time? Can I really do this? With this kind of support, you bet you can. So show them the tools. And that's it for that. So we've kind of gone over this really, really quickly from what it is that we've covered. So, in terms of the process, we also covered strategy. Now, just really quickly, I'll just show you the one slide that sort of touches that. We, let me share my screen here. Excuse me one second while I get that set up. Okay, so this slide, which is the one that we've seen a few times, has a strategy for 30 days. Let me just accelerate through that. There we go. Okay, there we go. Our strategy to distinguish from process is how many people do we take through this process and in what time frame? And if we have a goal of meeting certain expectations where the incentive is concerned, we've got to set up a flow. We've got to get a certain pace going. A daily method of operation, a daily rhythm that leads to a weekly rhythm, that leads to a monthly rhythm, so that at the end of the month, the end of 30 days, we have a predictable result. Anything that is predictable makes this duplicatable. So the key is some level of duplication. The idea is make it duplicatable. So this strategy that I show you here is one that has been tested and proven, I can't say how many times, but we just know that if you can get 30 people through the information flow within a month's time, then that business that you're launching will have attained the rank of silver, maybe even gold. In fact, when we were first working with this strategy, silver back then was 20,000 points in a month. And as you know, gold is 15,000 points. So this conceivably can help somebody attain the rank of gold in a month. Well, if that's conceivable, then surely silver in a month is conceivable. And if even that is something that's hard to imagine, then clearly executive in a month is conceivable. Either way, what we have is a predictable result with some kind of a formula that we can duplicate and work on getting better and better at. And therefore, if we're breaking executives every month, then every other month we're breaking silvers. And then every month after that, within 90 days, we're breaking golds. So it comes down to get good at something. Just something is better than nothing, and it's certainly better than random. And this is the system that I've been working with, or the strategy that I've been working with for almost 25 years. So I think it works. It works very, very effectively. And of course, it's not perfect, but we don't want perfect. We want just something that works, something that's good. So I'm going to open up to some questions because we did a lot of content over the last 3 calls, and I want to be able to see how you are interpreting it, how it's working for you. So if you've got a question, if you've got some comments, please feel to unmute and jump in. And by the way, just as a footnote, the Saturday call, great feedback on that, and you can see how that call serves a purpose in this process. It really adds to the idea of a lock-in event where the lock-in is helping people to understand the value. Remember, the lock-in is the value of the opportunity, the value of the business opportunity. So that's why those testimonies that you saw on Saturday were focused on business. If you had a lock-in event with people who had been going through this process, then that information would be very relevant to them. At the right time, that information becomes something that can help them make a decision. And we also saw feedback through the Launch Partners WhatsApp chat. Some of you are a part of that, that people were actually signing in as a result of that day's activity. So this is what makes the system predictable, that if you simply follow the formula, there's a predictable outcome, which makes this a business and allows you to duplicate that, which allows you then to grow your organizations, and you will experience the compound effect, which Ben talked about on Saturday. The idea that things begin to compound and accelerate and grow exponentially. It's just that consistency of activity when compounded over time. So I'm going to add the consistency of a predictable system or predictable process when compounded over time will create exponential growth. And that's why it's been such an emphasis. Questions?
Mike, a question that keeps popping up. I have a number of consultants that tell me, you know, they want to rebuild and get re-going, but yet, you know, like our event Saturday, nobody came to, would just taking a step back, starting over, sitting down, using these tools, because these people have been around for 4 or 5, 6 years. We didn't have tools like that. Would that be effective? And, you know, when you're starting with, okay, you know, let's discover what your why is. You know, if they don't really have a strong why, and you get into the time, you know, we have a lot of consultants that they put the money into it. You know, they buy products for themselves, but yet they never have any time. They don't make any time. Everything else has a priority. And to be perfectly honest, I can't tell you what their why is, why they wanted to get involved. You know, they're still around. They still, you know, they renew every year, you know, but, you know, it's a lot of, oh, I want to do this. Oh, sorry, can't do it. Oh, this is going on. Oh, that's going on. So, you know, would trying to, you know, attempting to sit down with them, start at square one, you know, pull these tools out and say, okay, let's start over. Let's pretend, you know, you're just getting interested, and let's start over. Let's see if we can, you know, I don't know, would something
okay.
like that.
There's a few questions in one there. So let me start by answering the first question, which was, you know, can we take a step back with them and sort of push reset? The telltale thing that you said there was that they don't have a strong why, or if they're not making Nikan a priority because they don't have a strong why. And so what's their motive for being there right now? I guess they just like being part of something, not necessarily building something. So people do actually get some psychological benefit from just simply being a part of something. You know, not necessarily doing much other than just simply being a part of it and saying, you know, adding to their label of I am a Nikan wellness consultant. But that doesn't really mean anything unless they're building a Nikan business to some degree. So I would say it's always possible, but it's a lot of energy expended on trying to help somebody. You know, it's easier to give birth than to raise the dead. That's saying something that just really makes sense to me, and I think you'd have a lot more fun trying to you know, work with and develop your ability to reach out and find some new people, because as soon as you've got that one new person who's excited, you're going to get re-excited. And when you're working with somebody who's had enough exposure to this and they still can't find their own why, you know, check their pulse. I think it would be the first thing to do, and then you can decide if they need some, you know, some kind of an injection or something. But I would say that your key here, and this goes back to this list. If somebody has a list, then they have something to do. There's something to do. Now it's a question of, if I have a list and I'm doing this right based on what we've talked about and how to approach people in that contact invite, then my list should never get smaller. It should always be replenished. A name will always lead to at least one other name or 100 other names, depending on whether they are a referral, a customer, or a consultant, if we're doing it right. So let's just be sure that we've learned how to do the contact and invite to the degree where we know a name will lead to at least another name. We'll never run out of names. So now, how important is it to have names? That becomes the real focal point of your business if you are short on names. Because once you have somebody who is interested, you have 100 names to work with, their 100 names. And so it always comes back to this point, the point of having the contacts. And it's a lot easier to have somebody get excited when they see some kind of a result. So while they're working on their names list, you might elicit 1 or 2 key contacts. Their 2 best key contacts. Maybe they're best friends, because remember, the thing that's going to set them back, that they're going to need the most help with, that you may never get a chance to experience unless you insist on it, is how they are treated from their best friends. And if best friends treat them disrespectfully, because you know how it is with friends, what did you do that for? You got into one of those dumb pyramid things or whatever it is that they're going to get hit with. If you're there as the A to help them through that, you're helping them overcome the biggest hurdle they've got, which answers the question of, will I release the rest of my names to you? If I have a fear of my reputation being sabotaged by being involved with this, I'll never give you names. I'll never go to my names list. I'll always think about talking cold market, which I probably will never do. So how do we get past that hurdle? We got to deal with that emotional problem, that barrier of, I'm afraid that people are going to laugh at me. I'm afraid that, well, that's where I come in. I want your best contact in front of me. So you go into that as a sponsor, fortifying their position, and you handle whatever objections come their way. And I'm experiencing that right now. And as I'm helping somebody launch, I'm seeing their best contacts or their best friends. And one of them was absolutely the perfect candidate for how bad it can get. It was perfect. Now, I don't mind that at all, because he saw me in action deal with that situation. And he also saw me how to deal with the follow-up on that situation. So he has some degree of confidence now and saw things differently. And so I think this early stage of launching somebody new is a lot easier to put time and energy into than trying to resuscitate somebody. And let's also add this. If you do have somebody new that you're able to start putting some numbers on the scoreboard, how do you think that's going to influence the people that have been sitting around on their hands? And I'll give you an example of this. I think it was a platinum, and my business was flat. It was like, it was not growing, it was not dying, it was just sort of flat. And I didn't know how to breathe life into this thing. I was doing pretty much everything I knew what to do. And I had the benefit of sponsoring one new person. And that new person really didn't know this business like I did and was willing to do what I asked, which was set a pretty big goal. So we launched that business in September. And by the end of September, they had exploded onto the scene to the point where there was enough noise made by that launch that a lot of people took notice. Well, they wanted to know what was going on with that person. The very next month, so this is September we launched, the very next month, October, my organizational volume from the other legs doubled. How is that possible? Well, what happened was that new person, because they did the impossible, made everything somewhat possible all of a sudden again. And that re-inspired the existing organization. So if I had to do it over again, I could have fanned the flames of an organization that was not, and I was doing that. I was doing the best I could. It was that new person that really allowed everything to explode. And then, by the way, I did it again, realizing that worked. So I went and sponsored another person, this time in Quebec, and same thing. So the key, and Dave Johnson talks about this, our Royal Ambassador, all the time, is new people. And that's the lifeblood of the business. Why is it the lifeblood of the business? Well, logically, obviously, you want to expand your organization. But more than that, psychologically, emotionally, it changes the dynamics. So if you talk to the people in Niken who've just sponsored somebody, who are launching somebody, you'll find that their whole energy and vibration is very different. And so I would say, and I know it's a long answer for the same answer, but the answer I think is invest in figuring out how to add some names onto your list so that you've got some people to go and work this process with, and find that next person you can launch. And then you can live vicariously through their launch, because you're the A in that situation. You've nothing to lose. So I hope that answers your question. And by the way, that suggests another topic of discussion, which is how can we create some new reach out methods? By the way, Heather, you're on the line. I want everybody to make sure that they're on the, oh gosh, my brain is a little bit numb today. So would you help me out, Heather Abbott? You have, you're working with Gary on some of the latest one was the wellness home I saw. Well, right. A lot of them. So how do people listen to and plug into that? I get it every time because I've registered somewhere.
Right. If you go to selfcarehub.com and you can click on Get the Impetus in your inbox right there at the top of the screen. It's in orange. We'll send you the weekly blog that we do. And right now we're featuring the wellness home.
And it's fantastic, guys. It's really good stuff.
Thank you.
So, any other questions out there? Maggie, you're talking, but I don't hear you. Can't hear you.
Well.
Oh, there you are. Can hear you now.
Can you? Okay, good. My screen's not lighting up though, so can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but faintly.
Huh. Okay, let me see. Well,
go ahead. We can make it out.
Okay, one of the things I wanted to mention that might be helpful for Sue is when somebody says they want to restart, reignite, to just have a really deep conversation about what does that mean? Like what is restarting? What does doing the business even look like for you? And then you can bring in, what's important. You have to have some hours. You have to have the time, money, contacts going. And then I give people homework. I give them that 100 name list, and I say, when you've got a lot of names on here, it doesn't have to be the whole 100, but get as many as you can, and then we'll put together the conversations that can introduce these people to what we have. And I use your contact and invite scripts. I have them write it out. I have them do one call and get some feedback on that, and then expand. And I'm always there as the A whenever they need me. So sometimes you can bring the dead back, and they have to have skin in the game.
That's great. By the way, I suggest 2 plans of action. What we've been talking about, the launch strategy, that's a launch for somebody who really wants to own this, who really wants a business and lickety split. So that's the launch strategy, your A game, your A plan. What's your B plan? Your B plan is more the gig economy type plan. And what I mean by that is gig economy is people are not necessarily making this a high priority, but it's a sideline. It's a side gig. And so for them, they're going to do something with some degree of consistency, but it's not going to be aggressive. So maybe what you have is a B plan where your B plan would be 2 contacts per day. 2 simple contacts per day is somebody who's working a B plan. And so if they're doing that and they're learning the process as they go, it's not aggressive. They're still going to gain some ground, but it's not the same as a launch strategy that says, we want to hit some targets by the end of this month and by the next month and by the 3rd month so that we have a launch plan that we are duplicating. So there's duplicating the process with some degree of consistency, and then there's duplicating the strategy with some degree of consistency. Those are sort of the two levels of doing the business, the A game and the B game. So if you've got a B plan for these people, then it may not be intimidating to them. But again, it all does fall back on the idea of them having a motivation, a why, and then having a contact list. I would add to Maggie's comment, maybe instead of saying, have a lot of names, when you have 10 names on your contact list, then let's resume and get into this process with some of them. That way there's a very specific number they're aiming at. Or it could be in the next 3 days, let's resume and we'll work with the names you have on your list. So put some kind of a condition where it actually sets up an outcome by a certain time frame. Otherwise, you're sort of spinning your wheels again, leaving things too open-ended. Any other questions or comments?
I have a comment.
Yes, go ahead.
With regard to your example last week, I think it was, your engineer's example of the uranium, I have a whistling tea kettle. And all of a sudden, the next time I started to make hot water, I noticed that I could see some steam coming out of the kettle, but I didn't hear anything. And then I just waited to see what would happen. And it started to whistle a little bit. And the more I let it go with the fire on high, the higher and more intense that whistle became until it was screeching. And it makes me think that that's the way we have, that we do our business. Either we just let it smoke a little bit, or we put the fire on high and keep it on high until it's really, really screaming, that whistling from the tea kettle.
Great example. The idea of duplication, correction, the idea of exponential growth, it's written about in this book. I mean, it talks about this book and how your business can grow. I've not seen a good example, a clear example in any network marketing situation where slow and steady leads to exponential growth. I've never seen that. So it's good in theory, but what creates explosive growth is focus. It's turn the heat on to max. It's pedal to the metal. It's get the airplane off the ground full speed, because you're going to run out of runway. Eventually, you're going to run out of runway. And what that means in this business is you run out of the emotional fortitude, or you run out of the whatever. You run out of steam. So I think the slow and methodical may be fine for somebody who's looking for a part-time income and generating trading time for money. So it will lead to the cash flow quadrants that we got into on Saturday that Ben presented, and that's in the PowerPoint. The idea of trading time for money like an employee, or trading time for money as a small business owner, it's the same thing. Those two are trading time for money. So slow and methodical leads to those two conclusions in the business, the retail business, and maybe sponsoring some people and earning a little bit extra leveraged money. But if you want to be on the right-hand side, it means growing an organization that grows without you. That requires a real kickstart. That requires a real focused energy, which, by the way, also the reasoning behind launch partners, the reasoning behind working collectively or collaboratively is because that creates the fusion. That creates the synergy necessary to create the impression of movement. If you were doing this all by yourself, you can imagine how difficult it would be if you didn't have this call or others like it to plug into. But the fact that you're part of a community, you know it, you feel it, and even though you're in your living room or you're in your hotel room and you're in your town, you know you're part of a greater thing. And the more often you connect with that greater thing, the more you feel and realize your connection to that. So you pick up on the energy of that. Well, that's true for new people as well, especially. So how do you get the new people to experience this feeling of being connected to a bigger thing? Plug them in. It's critical that we plug new people into our conference calls, all of them. This one, the leadership, everything. Tomorrow's leadership will be it'll be a continuation from Saturday, so to speak, because we want to start addressing new people. And we want you to invite those new people to these calls so they can experience what it means to be plugged in and part of something, because that energy will infuse in them and give them the extra horsepower that they need to maybe make that critical decision that I'm going to go from low gear to high gear. So keep that in mind, how important it is for you to feel connected. It's especially true for the newest kid on the block. Anyone else? We got a couple of minutes here, so if it doesn't have to be urgent, we might actually end this call a little bit earlier than most calls. That's okay too. Okay, so again, recapping what we've talked about in the previous 3 calls, I suggest maybe you make them favorites for people who you are looking to help get started, or people who are looking to get the knowledge of how do I go about launching somebody now that I've sponsored somebody. I need to put that cap on. And so I think those last 3 calls, the last preceding calls, three calls in a row, are very, very strong trainings for how to get people going. Yeah? How to get something launched. And anything? Last call? Okay. Well, guys, there's some big events coming up. And this year will be no shortage of big events, that's for sure. That's one thing that we have going on in the NICAN world in North America specifically. So please make sure you know what those events are, where they are. So there's April in San Francisco. There's May in Orlando. There's Toronto in did I miss it? No, it's
July in Orlando, Mike.
July. Thanks. July in Orlando. See, I don't even know. July in Orlando. There is Toronto in October, and there's San Antonio in November. So there's no shortage of events for 2018. We want to take advantage of all of these events because we want to bring new people to them so they can plug in and experience the NICAN family. It's easy when they experience the NICAN family in high concentration. So it's the best recruiting events that we have. And of course, we fill all these other events. You might, by the way, would you consider this call tonight a prospecting call? If you had somebody new on this call who had some context, some understanding of what it was they were listening to, then they would probably find that this was a very informative call. And if you could assure them that this is the kind of support that they have, this would build confidence and belief in the idea and the opportunity of being able to run this business online, internationally, and have really good, solid mentoring and coaching. So all of these calls are A's. So be sure that you're not just holding them off for yourselves. Make sure your new people know they're important for them if they're looking to either explore doing this as a business or really launch this as a business.
I'll just comment, Mike, it's new people. New people and momentum. That's basically the bottom line of the last 3 sessions.
Yeah.
Last 18 months.
How do you feel when you sponsor somebody new? How about nervous? A little nervous?
Better than now.
My mentor used to say, it's always good to be somewhere between nervous and excited. That's where you want to be, somewhere between nervous and excited. So that keeps us on our toes. And hopefully this content has helped you refine your understanding. Don't hesitate. Go play those things back because you want to learn this. You want to get really good at being able to launch somebody. I'll tell you why it's really good to be able to launch somebody. Oh, yes. Thanks, Michelle. HBM and Business Opportunity, April 7 and 8 in Winnipeg. I'll be there as well. Jeff Isom is going to be there with Michelle and the team there. So if you've got somebody who's looking for a 2-day HBM experience, complete with a business opportunity in the Winnipeg area or anywhere, that you can fly to Winnipeg. It's a short hop from pretty much any city. So keep those dates in mind. Where was I? Oh, yes. Why would you want to get really good at being able to launch somebody or build your confidence in being able to launch somebody? I'll tell you why. Because if you're afraid that you don't know what to do, then residing within you, in your consciousness, is the idea that I can't do it. And therefore, the law of attraction will ensure the result that you won't even be given the opportunity to do it. However, if there was a hunger in you because you have this urge to explore this launch strategy and really put it to work, then you're opening up a pathway for the law of attraction to do what it does, which is to attract into your sphere of, into your influence, your sphere of influence, the opportunity to launch somebody. So it really is important to feel confident that you know what to do, because that'll make you really attractive and will attract people into your field of view.
One word that you said reminds me of that motivational speaker, and I was trying to think of his name. You got to be hungry.
That was, oh my God, that was Atlanta.
African American.
Yeah, fantastic.
Got to be hungry.
Okay. Well, everybody.
Les Brown?
Les Brown. You got to be hungry.
Hey,
I hope you're hungry. I hope you're hungry. So get hungry. Get some of this out of your system. You want to get somebody launched, launch them in a big way, an aggressive way, and experience the craziness of it and the fun of it all at the same time. But because you know what you're doing, well, you know what's going to happen.
We like that Arnold Schwarzenegger thing today.
Well, I didn't see that. What was that?
Rick Murphy posted it on Facebook.
Well, you got to see that.
It's very good about big vision. Don't listen to the naysayers. Keep going. It was, Arnold.
Arnold.
Well, hey, listen, he's a great example of what's possible when you have vision.
It's like 7 minutes long. We reposted it on Facebook, but it was just excellent. And it was funny. And it was very, very good. Rick posted it. That's how we saw it.
Well, let me ask you something. Of all the people in the world at large right now, where do you guys stand in terms of vision of the future? I mean, if you were somebody who was sitting at home right now, coming home from a dead-end job that you hate, but you've got to do it because you got to make a living and pay the mortgage, and you didn't have this to look forward to, the possibility of a different life because you have a mechanism, a vehicle. If you didn't have this, man, your energy would be pretty low right now. Your vision would be non-existent. And so you guys actually have a vision. You have a vehicle. The question is, are you ramped up to the point where anybody comes in within 10 feet of you feels you? Is that where you're at? Because if you were doing that, and you got to do it to yourself. It's not like you can't wait for something to happen or for somebody to do it for you. You got to turn the volume up within you. And then the things start to come together. So at least recognize you have a vehicle. It's one that you're passionate about. It's one that you know really, really well. And it's one that you can express to people with great conviction and understanding, depth of understanding. Well, then, let's not keep it a secret that we know something, right? Let's get out there and let's be bold and let's be big and let's be strong and let's make sure that people walk away from our encounter thinking, I don't know, whatever it is they're on, but man, it sounds pretty interesting. I need to find out more about that.
To quote Dave Johnson, Mike.
The right one.
To quote Dave Johnson, I feel like joining again, or to quote Eric Worre, be bodacious.
Well, on that note, let's go out and be bodacious, all right? You guys have a great afternoon, wherever you are listening to this in the playback. Have a good night, guys. See you next week.
Thanks.